You know, there's a lot of arguments that go back and forth about the validity or efficacy, shall we say, of manipulation in art, particularly in photography. There's a lot of people that think that a photograph is not really true if it's been manipulated. One of the first manipulations that all photographers do, is they decide what they're going to covertly hide from the audience by zeroing in on a specific frame that they do show you. For me, I like to define photographs as being stylized interpretations of a given reality that have been filtered through the photographer's chosen set of tools and materials and are based solely upon the photographer's decision-making process. Every photograph lies, yes. The idea of photographs aren't real. I mean, you know, the digital age has kind of brought to the forefront this issue of the reality in photographs, and I think people have had to start to pay more attention to the fact that photographs are stylized interpretations. That's what makes them so interesting and different, I think. Well, I think I've always, of course, wanted to make the most perfect print I could from the negative and be as faithful to the negative as possible. And as a lot of conventional photographers would describe it, once one goes over to the dark side, all of a sudden, you no longer have to think of photographs in terms of what is conventionally known as a 19th century definition of what a photograph actually is. You're free to, you know, you're free from those constraints. Every photographer in this day and age, working digitally anyway, is free to define for themselves what a photograph actually is. The first thing that I tried to do with the computer was to mimic exactly what I'd done with conventional tools and materials. And what I found was, after a period of time of doing that, that it probably wasn't necessarily the best tool to do that. So I thought I was going to try to use it to its best advantage, and that's what kind of got me into doing the botanical series. I just basically got into Photoshop and started experimenting with it, and you know, no holds barred. It was like a kid in a candy store, because all of a sudden all the rules were out the window. I could do pretty much whatever I wanted. For me, it became a lot like doing jazz improvisation. Make it up as you go along. I remain as excited about the photosynthesis series and working with it today as that excitement I relate back to when I first started photography, and that kind of, you know, child wonderment. And one of the things I really also feel strongly about when you're growing or during the growth process as a photographer, a childlike vision or a sort of a naive vision of the world is not a bad thing. We tend to focus in more and more on what it is we intellectually know about something, to the point that we kind of blind ourselves to that naivete. And I think it's important occasionally to kind of step back and say, okay, let's look at this from a whole different perspective, see what's there. I am editing and composing photographs throughout every waking hour, and probably even in my dreams. I mean, one does not just go to inspiration point, stand there and get into photographic mode and you know, start thinking about how to frame the image. I think it happens throughout the day. For me, it happens all the time. All the time that I'm walking around looking at things. You've got this camera pointing at me right now. I'm framing up, the space around what's going on. It's just something I do. I guess I like to go around and sort of compartmentalize and organize the world in my mind visually that way. It's a process of constantly looking and very occasionally actually seeing, and then being able to translate that vision to the two-dimensional frame. I think Edward Weston referred to it as the flame of recognition, where you are out in the world and you have this kind of connection with whatever it is that you're photographing that doesn't happen all the time, but it requires that you kind of be out there looking all the time in order to, to catch those moments. And it's not just about a moment in time. It's actually about a connection between your recognition of whatever it is you're looking at and the particular situation that is occurring at that very moment. I've never really been a particularly, mystical or woo-woo kind of person. I'm more of a practical person, but it's really true. You have to kind of open up your mind and let the photographs find you. The more you are concentrating on what it is you are doing consciously, the less likely you're going to be getting good pictures. It never fails that if I go out with a sort of preconceived idea about what I want to photograph, I'm going to have a real hard time finding that. The growth process is absolutely vital, and I think that the best way to grow is to focus on the process itself and not so much on the goal. Journeys in life don't tend to take you to where you first thought you were going to be going, so concentrating on the process of being a photographer for me is really what's most interesting. The photographs themselves are sort of a record of that journey. Kind of like a diary. They're sort of peripheral to the actual journey itself, and what I'm interested in is the process of going through my life as a photographer. One of the things that I really like most about photography, and frankly any art, is that you'll never figure out how to do it in your lifetime. It's a constant experimentation, and it's a constant learning process. I'm constantly feeling like for myself that I get myself into these little creative boxes where I'm confined and I'm doing things the same way. One of the reasons I photograph so many different things is I can so easily bore myself and start to become repetitive, and I just don't like that. I like to climb out of that box, and usually I end up in another box, but for me, it's the process of learning and changing and growing that is really the most exciting part about being a photographer.